The Galactic Council chambers hummed with tension as Captain Helena Ward stood before the assembled representatives. Her uniform bore the marks of hasty repairs, and a healing cut crossed her left cheek. She had refused cosmetic treatment, wearing the wound as a badge of honor. Commander Kravix stood to the side, officially present as a military observer, but now unsure of his role. The weeks aboard the Intrepid had changed something fundamental in his understanding of warfare, and, perhaps more surprisingly, of humans themselves. "Captain Ward," began the Trevian counselor, her crystalline form pulsing with barely contained anger. "You were assigned to patrol the Outer Rim. Instead, you pursued hostile forces beyond Council jurisdiction, engaged in unauthorized military operations, and involved civilian vessels in combat. Explain yourself." Helena stood tall. The Scythe Collective was preparing a massive assault on Rim colonies. Had we followed protocol and waited for Council approval, thousands of civilians would have died. "That is not your determination to make," insisted the Novalian representative. "The Council establishes military protocols for a reason." "With respect," Helena replied, "those protocols were designed for conventional warfare. The situation required adaptation." "Adaptation?" The Vexery counselor's scales shifted in patterns indicating disbelief. "You engaged an enemy force 5 times your size with inferior technology and civilian support. That is not adaptation, that is recklessness." Helena's gaze remained steady. "The results speak for themselves. The Scythe Collective has been neutralized. The Rim colonies are safe. At what cost?" demanded another counselor. "One civilian vessel destroyed, all others severely damaged, your own ship barely functional." "Every crew member knew the risks," Helena answered. "They chose to fight anyway." The chamber erupted in multiple species versions of outrage. Kravix watched Helena, absorbed their criticism without flinching. Behind her stood Lieutenant Reed Thompson, still bearing the marks of his injuries, but insistent on attending. Their shoulders nearly touched, a subtle reminder of the connection Kravix had observed developing between them. The council chairwoman raised her appendages for silence. "Commander Kravix, you observed these humans in combat. What is your assessment?" All eyes turned to him. 3 weeks ago, Kravix would have condemned human tactics as primitive and reckless. Now he found himself considering his words carefully. "The humans," he began, "fight unlike any species I have encountered in 3 centuries of military service." The council leaned forward expectantly, clearly anticipating criticism. "Their technology is indeed inferior," Kravix continued. "Their ships are smaller, their weapons less powerful. By every measurable standard, they should have been defeated." Helena's expression remained neutral, though Kravix noticed Reed shift slightly closer to her. "And yet," Kravix said, "they achieved what our own forces have failed to accomplish for decades. They eliminated a threat that has plagued the Rim sectors for generations." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "How?" asked the chairwoman. "Explain their tactical advantage." Kravix's 4 arms gestured in a pattern indicating deep consideration. "They have no tactical advantage, not in the way we understand it. What they possess is something else entirely." He stepped forward, addressing the full council. "Humans do not fight with superior technology or overwhelming force. They fight with a quality I have never observed in other species. They value the mission above their own survival, not from desperation or suicidal tendency, but from a conscious choice to protect others." The chamber fell silent. I watched a human pilot named Marcus Chon fly deliberately into an enemy formation, knowing he would not return, because it was the most effective way to protect others. I saw Captain Ward position her vessel to absorb damage meant for a civilian ship. I observed crew members make decisions in seconds that our military protocols would require hours to approve. Kravix turned to face Helena directly. Humans fight not just with weapons, but with bonds. They form connections that our military doctrine would consider dangerous. Yet these connections make them fight harder rather than compromise their effectiveness. The council remained silent, processing his assessment. In 3 centuries, Kravix concluded, I believed I understood warfare. The humans have shown me I did not. Their strength lies not in superior firepower, but in their willingness to sacrifice for each other and for principles they value above themselves. The deliberations that followed lasted hours. Helena and her officers waited outside the chambers while the council debated. Reed stood close beside her, their hands occasionally brushing. Whatever happens, he said quietly, the Rim colonies are safe. That's what matters. Helena nodded. We did what was necessary. I have no regrets. Their eyes met, both aware that this statement encompassed more than their military decisions. When they were recalled to the chambers, the council's decision was unexpected. Captain Ward, announced the chairwoman, the council has reviewed Commander Kravix's assessment and the results of your operations. While your methods were unorthodox and your disregard for protocol concerning, we cannot argue with your effectiveness. She paused, her crystalline structure shifting into a formal configuration. Therefore, Earth's forces will be granted expanded responsibilities within Council space. You will train special tactical units in your methods and continue operations against remaining scythe elements. The chamber buzzed with surprised reactions from various delegations. As the formal session concluded, Commander Jax Mercereth's diplomatic representative approached Helena with a broad smile. Congratulations, Captain. You've accomplished in weeks what I expected would take decades. We just did our job, Helena replied modestly, and changed the Council's perception of humanity in the process, Jax added. He glanced toward where Navarra, the blue-skinned researcher, was approaching. It seems humans are making quite an impression. Navarra joined them, her silver eyes bright with interest. Captain Ward, your tactics have created quite a stir in the research division. I was hoping to interview your crew about human combat philosophy. I'm sure that can be arranged, Helena replied, noticing how Jax moved slightly closer to Navarra, their arms nearly touching. Across the chamber, Kravix watched the humans with newfound respect. In their inferior vessels, with their primitive weapons, they had accomplished what the Council's advanced fleets could not. More importantly, they had done so without sacrificing the connections that made them human. As Helena and Reed departed, together, their shoulders touching in a way that would be considered unprofessional in most military forces, Kravix understood that he had witnessed something profound. Human warfare wasn't defined by the strength of their weapons, but by the strength of their bonds. Perhaps, he reflected, that was the most powerful weapon of all. The pursuit of the Scythe Collective took the Intrepid deep into uncharted space. Intelligence from captured pirates revealed something more disturbing than random raids. Collective was gathering resources for a massive strike against the Rim colonies. Helena called a strategy session in the command center. Kravix attended, still trying to understand human military thinking. The Collective is gathering here. Reed indicated a star system on the holographic display. Our scouts count at least 23 vessels, including 2 heavy battlecruisers. Those are serious odds, Valentina observed. Conventional wisdom would suggest we retreat and request Council reinforcements, Helena said, glancing at Kravix. But by the time they arrive, the Collective will have launched their attack. You cannot possibly engage such a force with 3 ships, Kravix stated. Helena smiled. Actually, we have 5 now. The mining colonies have contributed 2 armed freighters, civilian vessels. Kravix's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Converted for combat, Reed explained, and crewed by volunteers who are tired of living under scythe raids. After the meeting, Kravix observed Helena and Reed working late into the night, developing battle scenarios. Their professional focus was absolute, yet he noticed subtle changes. In their behavior, when they thought no one was watching, a lingering glance, fingers brushing when passing a datapad, standing closer than necessary. When Reed left briefly, Kravix approached Helena. "Your tactical officer seems unusually devoted to you." "Lieutenant Thompson is devoted to his duty," Helena replied carefully. "I have observed your species for weeks now," Kravix said. "You form bonds that would be considered unprofessional in other military forces, yet they seem to enhance your combat effectiveness rather than diminish it." Helena studied him. "Emotions aren't weaknesses, Commander. They're fuel. We fight harder for those we care about, even when such attachments could cloud judgment, especially then," she answered. "The best decisions come from both head and heart." That night, as the Intrepid prepared for what might be its final battle, Reed found Helena in her quarters, reviewing tactical displays. "You should rest," he said, standing in the doorway. "So should you," she replied, but didn't ask him to leave. Reed entered, the door closing behind him. "The crew is ready. They know what we're facing." "And they're still with us?" "Every one of them." Reed moved closer. "They believe in you. I believe in you." The professional distance they'd maintained dissolved in the face of what tomorrow might bring. Helena rose from her desk, closing the distance between them. "If we weren't Captain and Lieutenant ... double quotes," she began. Reed's hand touched her face. "But we are. And tomorrow we might not be anything at all." Their kiss was both a beginning and possibly an end tender yet urgent, with everything that might never be said. As the ship's night cycle dimmed the lights, they found comfort in each other's arms. The looming battle, making each moment more precious. Morning brought clarity rather than regret. They prepared for battle not as lovers but as officers, with a deeper understanding of what they were fighting for. The Intrepid's small fleet approached the scythe gathering point using a nebula to mask their signatures. Kravix, now fully invested in observing human combat tactics, stood on the bridge as they prepared to engage an enemy that outnumbered them nearly 5-1. Conventional strategy would consider this suicide, he noted. "Good thing we're not conventional," Helena replied. "All ships execute Thunderhead protocol." What followed defied everything Kravix understood about warfare. The human vessels didn't form a defensive line, but instead attacked from 5 different vectors simultaneously. Their fighters deployed in patterns that seemed chaotic until Kravix recognized they were creating deliberate gap traps that the scythe ships eagerly pursued and became entangled in. The converted mining vessels deployed gravitational mines that disrupted the scythe formations. The Intrepid targeted communications arrays rather than weapons, isolating enemy ships from each other. When one of the scythe battlecruisers managed to lock weapons on the Intrepid, Reed's tactical station exploded, throwing him across the bridge. Helena's focus never wavered, though Kravix saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped her command chair. "Evasive pattern Omega," she ordered. "Medical to the bridge." The battle raged for over 2 hours. The human vessels took heavy damage, but inflicted worse. What they lacked in firepower, they made up for in coordination and adaptability. When standard tactics failed, they invented new ones on the spot. Kravix watched in amazement as Helena directed the battle while medics treated Reed nearby. Something in her expression had changed, a cold determination that made even Kravix step back. When the scythe flagship targeted one of the mining vessels, Helena implemented a strategy that no military commander Kravix had ever observed would consider. She positioned the Intrepid as a shield, taking hits meant for the civilian ship. "Captain, our forward shields are failing," Darius reported. "Reroute power from aft shields," Helena ordered. Keep us between the flagship and the Helios Defender. The gambit worked. The Intrepid absorbed damage, but remained functional long. Enough for their fighters to disable the flagship's main weapons. As the battle turned, the remaining scythe vessels attempted to retreat only to find their escape routes, blocked by the human fighters. In the end, 17 scythe ships were destroyed or captured. The human fleet lost 1 mining vessel and suffered severe damage to all others. The Intrepid's bridge was partially exposed to space. Emergency force fields containing the atmosphere. After the battle, Kravix found Helena in the medical bay, sitting beside Reed's bed. The lieutenant was unconscious, but stable. Your tactics violated every principle of military engagement I have studied, Kravix said. You should have been destroyed. Helena didn't look up for Reed. We fight differently because we value different things. The Scythe Collective fights for power. We fight for each other. As if to emphasize her point, Reed's fingers tightened around hers. Though his eyes remained closed, an emergency transmission interrupted them. Captain Ward, you are ordered to return to Council space immediately. The Council demands an explanation for unauthorized military actions in the Outer Rim. Helena finally looked at Kravix. It seems we're being called to account for saving lives. Kravix found himself in the unexpected position of understanding her frustration. After witnessing human warfare firsthand, he knew the Council's perspective was as limited as his had once been. Commander Kravix arrived on the UDF Intrepid expecting to find chaos or defeat. Instead, he found focused preparation. No elaborate ceremonies greeted him, just Captain Helena Ward's firm handshake and direct gaze. Welcome aboard, Commander. You've arrived at an interesting time. I came to observe human military procedures, Kravix replied, all 4 eyes scanning the bridge. The Council needs accurate assessment of your capabilities. Of course, Helena nodded. Lieutenant Reed will show you around while I finalize our approach. Reed Thompson appeared at Kravix's side. This way, Commander. I'll show you our tactical systems first. As they toured the ship, Kravix noted the absence of rigid formality he was accustomed to. Crew members addressed each other, casually, yet executed their duties with precision. There were no ceremonial guards, no elaborate protocols, just efficient functionality. Your command structure seems informal, Kravix observed. Reed smiled. We value results over ceremony. Each crew member is encouraged to think independently while working toward common objectives. And this works in combat situations? Especially then, Reed replied. When circumstances change rapidly, rigid hierarchies become liabilities. On the bridge, Helena was conferring with her officers around a holographic display of the Scythe Collective fleet. 15 enemy vessels against their 3. They're arranged in their standard encirclement formation, Valentina was saying. They'll try to surround us and attack from all sides. But they don't coordinate well between ships, added Navigation Officer Darius Wells, his fingers manipulating the projection. Each captain acts independently. Then we break their formation, Helena decided. Darius, plot a course that makes them think we're retreating toward the Keldron Nebula. Valentina, prepare fighter squadrons for Pattern Delta. Reed, how are our modified missiles? Reed, returning with Kravix, joined the conversation seamlessly. Engineering has equipped them with multiple warheads. We can target 3 ships with each launch. Kravix watched in growing amazement. There were no formal briefings, no elaborate strategy sessions, just rapid adaptation based on enemy behavior rather than fixed doctrine. You're seriously attacking? He asked Helena. You're outnumbered 5-1. Helena's eyes never left the tactical display. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. The Scythe Collective expects us to follow conventional tactics. We won't. The battle began 2 hours later. Kravix stood on the bridge, expecting to witness a human defeat. Instead, he saw something that defied military logic. The Intrepid and its companions appeared to retreat, drawing the scythe ships into pursuit. The pirates, eager for an easy victory, broke formation to chase them. At precisely the right moment, Helena gave a single command: execute pattern Delta. Human fighters launched in what appeared to be a disorganized scatter, but quickly revealed itself as an intricate web that divided the pursuing ships. Simultaneously, the Intrepid turned sharply and fired modified missiles that split into multiple warheads just before impact. The scythe ships, caught in disarray, couldn't coordinate their response. Their formation shattered, each vessel fighting independently exactly as the humans had predicted. Target their command ship, Helena ordered. Their shields are too strong for our weapons. Reed reported. Helena exchanged a look with him that Kravix couldn't interpret. Something unspoken passed between them. Implement Sunburst Protocol, she said quietly. Reed nodded, his hand briefly touching hers. I'll prep the shuttle. Kravix followed Reed to the launch bay, where a pilot named Marcus Chon was preparing a small craft loaded with unstable reactor material. This is a suicide mission, Kravix realized. Marcus checked his systems calmly. It's a necessary mission. If we don't take out their command ship, the colonies will suffer. But you will die. Marcus looked at him with clear eyes. Maybe. But if I don't do this, thousands will die instead. That's not acceptable. Reed gripped Marcus's shoulder. The corridor will be open for 7.3 seconds. Make it count. What followed astonished Kravix. Marcus piloted the shuttle directly into the heart of the enemy formation. When scythe ships fired on him, he didn't evade, he accelerated. The explosion destroyed the command ship and 3 escorts. The remaining scythe vessels, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray. The Intrepid and its companions pressed the advantage, targeting engines and weapon systems rather than going for kills. We want them disabled, not destroyed, Helena explained to Kravix. Prisoners provide intelligence. The battle lasted 38 minutes. When it ended, 7 scythe ships were destroyed, 6 disabled and captured, and 2 had fled. The humans had lost 1 shuttle and suffered minimal damage to their vessel's dot. In the aftermath, Kravix found Helena in the memorial hall. She was adding Marcus Chun's name to a wall of honor. Does it not disturb you? Kravix asked. Sending your people to die? Helena's fingers lingered on the engraved name. Every name on this wall disturbs me, Commander. But what would disturb me more is failing those who depend on us. Marcus understood that. We all do. I do not understand. It's not about being fearless or heroic, she said. It's about accepting responsibility for something larger than ourselves. We fight not because we love war, but because we love what we're protecting. As the Intrepid prepared to pursue the remaining scythe vessels, Kravix began to question everything he thought he knew about warfare. These humans fought with inferior technology, yet achieved results that superior forces couldn't match. And somewhere in the equation was the bond he'd observed between Helena and Reed, a connection that seemed to strengthen, rather than compromise their military effectiveness. Commander Jax Mercer adjusted his navy blue uniform as the massive doors to the Galactic Council chambers parted. Unlike the elaborate garments worn by other species representatives, the standard United Defense Force uniform was designed for functionality rather than impression. The chamber's curved walls stretched upward into a dome dotted with stars, a reminder of what united them all. Breathe, Jax reminded himself. Earth's future among the stars depended on this meeting. At the center of the chamber stood Kravix, the Council's military strategist. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber lights. 2 of his amber eyes narrowed as they assessed Jax, while the other two continued scanning data projections hovering nearby. "The human delegation may approach," announced the Trevian counselor, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. Jacques stepped forward, maintaining the practiced calm that had earned him this assignment. "Honored Council, I stand before you representing Earth and its colonies. We seek admission to the Galactic Council and offer our partnership in maintaining peace across the stars." Kravix made a clicking sound that the translator rendered as a dismissive chuckle. "Partnership? Your species has barely mastered basic interplanetary travel. Your largest warship would fit in the cargo bay of a Ventari cruiser." "Size isn't everything, Commander Kravix," Jax replied with a slight smile. "Earth has much to offer beyond military might." "Such as?" asked the Novalian representative, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with curiosity. "Adaptability, innovation, determination. We've survived challenges that should have destroyed us. We've rebuilt from devastation multiple times. Humans don't." "Quit." Kravix stepped closer, towering over Jax. "Every species claims exceptional qualities until they face true galactic warfare. The Scythe Collective consumed 3 civilizations in the past century. The Void Walkers obliterated the entire Parnassian system. What makes humans different?" Jax met Kravix's gaze. "We understand that strength isn't just about firepower. It's about continuing when logic says you should surrender." The council deliberated for hours. Jax stood motionless, the way he'd been trained. Finally, the decision came: Earth would be admitted, but assigned to auxiliary forces in the Outer Rim, far from any meaningful responsibility. "We won't disappoint you," Jax promised, bowing slightly. After the formal proceedings, a reception was held in the Grand Observatory. Jax sipped a beverage that tasted like sparkling cinnamon while various representatives approached him with diplomatic pleasantries. "They always put the newcomers in the rim," said a melodic voice behind him. Jax turned to find a slender blue-skinned woman observing him. Her eyes were entirely silver, without pupils, yet somehow conveyed warmth. Elegant markings traced the sides of her face. "Navara Tellis," she introduced herself. "Xenocultural Research Division." "Commander Jax Mercer," he replied, surprised by the instant comfort he felt in her presence. "Earth's unfortunate diplomatic sacrifice." She laughed, a sound like chimes. "You handled Kravix well. He's rejected 17 species in the past decade, yet he voted for us?" "Precisely." Navara moved closer, her silver eyes studying him. "He believes you'll learn your limitations quickly in the Rim. He's underestimating you, I think." "Most species do," Jax said, noticing how her blue skin seemed to shimmer under the observatory lights. "I've studied Earth's history," she admitted. "Your people are fascinating. You fight wars among yourselves, yet unite instantly against external threats. You create art about fictional apocalypses while working to prevent real ones." Jax smiled. "We contain multitudes." "I'd like to learn more," Ivara said, her fingers briefly touching his arm. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through him. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation tomorrow. I could show you the celestial gardens." "I'd like that," Jax replied, suddenly very glad for his diplomatic assignment. Across the room, Kravix watched the interaction with all 4 eyes. Humans were predictable, already seeking alliances and connections. They would learn soon enough that the galaxy had no place for sentimentality. The Outer Rim would teach them their proper place in the cosmic hierarchy. But something about Jax Mercer's confidence nagged at him. In 3 centuries of evaluating species, Kravix had never seen one so unimpressed by the Council's grandeur. It was almost as if the humans expected to be underestimated. Perhaps, Kravix thought, observing them more closely might be prudent. The edge of nothing, Captain Helena. Ward stood on the bridge of the UDF Intrepid, gazing at the vast emptiness of the Outer Rim displayed on the view screen. 3 months into their assignment, and she'd already doubled the patrol efficiency of previous council forces. "Another successful day of absolutely nothing," remarked Lieutenant Reed Thompson, her tactical officer, as he joined her at the viewport. His dark eyes held the humor that had made these endless patrols bearable. "The council wants us bored and forgotten out here," Helena replied, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "But I don't do bored well," Reed smiled. "None of us do. That's why we've mapped 17 new asteroid fields, established contact with 23 independent mining colonies, and charted faster routes through the Sargas Nebula. And why the crew is restless for something meaningful," Helena added, noticing how Reed stood just close enough that their shoulders almost touched. She'd found herself increasingly aware of his presence lately. Their conversation was interrupted by Communications Officer Prakesh. "Captain, incoming transmission from mining colony Helios. They're reporting Scythe collective activity in their sector." Helena straightened. "The pirates we were warned about?" "Yes, ma'am. 3 raids in the past week. They've hit supply convoys and stolen medical supplies and ore processors." "Set course for Helios," Helena ordered. "Inform command of our heading." The Intrepid arrived at Helios to find a community living in fear. The colony leader, Brax Vaughn, a stocky man with ridge-lined features marking his mixed heritage, showed them the damage. "They take what they want and leave us barely enough to survive," Brax explained. "The council sends patrols after they're gone, documents the losses, and promises protection that never materializes." Helena studied the attack patterns carefully. "They're using this sector as a staging area. These aren't random raids. They're preparing for something bigger." Reed analyzed the data on his tablet. "Based on their movement patterns, I'd say their base is somewhere in the Valdra system, beyond council space." Helena's decision came quickly. "We're going after them." "That would require special permission," Prakesh reminded her. "We're restricted to council territory." "Then we'll get permission," Helena said firmly. The request was transmitted to council headquarters and landed on Commander Kravik's desk. He read it with growing amusement. Humans requesting permission to pursue the Scythe Collective beyond council space. After just 3 months, they believed they could handle interstellar pirates that had plagued the Rim for decades. "Let them try," Kravix told his aide. "Approve the request. They'll learn their limitations the hard way." When approval came, Helena wasted no time. That evening, she gathered her senior officers to plan the operation. "The Scythe Collective operates in packs," Reed explained, displaying tactical projections. "They surround targets and overwhelm them with numbers rather than sophisticated attacks. Their coordination is poor," added Security Chief Valentina Orlov, her muscular frame leaning forward intently. "Each ship acts independently. If we can disrupt their formation, they'll struggle to regroup." As the meeting continued, Helena noticed Reed watching her with an intensity that wasn't entirely professional. When their eyes met, neither looked away immediately. After the officers dispersed, Reed lingered. "This is a risk," he said quietly. "The council expects us to fail." Helena moved closer. "I don't care what they expect. Those colonies need protection. That's why the crew would follow you anywhere," Reed said, his voice dropping. "You see people, not statistics." The air between them seemed to charge with unspoken tension. Helena allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. "What if I'm leading them into something we can't handle?" Reed's hand found hers briefly. "Then we'll handle it anyway. That's what humans do." The touch lingered longer than necessary, both of them aware of the line they weren't crossing yet. The Intrepid entered the Valdra system 3 days later, accompanied by 2 smaller patrol vessels. Intelligence had estimated 5 to 7 scythe ships. They found 15. Tactical analysis, Helena demanded as the enemy vessels appeared. On screen, 15 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers, Reed reported. They're in standard formation, preparing to jump to Council space. They're planning a major attack, Helena realized. Valentina, combat stations. Reed, prepare our special modifications. As the crew rushed to battle stations, Helena knew the Council would consider retreat the logical choice when outnumbered 3-1. But humans had never relied solely on logic. On his observation post, Commander Kravix received word that a human fleet had engaged the Scythe Collective. He scheduled a transport immediately. This would be educational, watching humans learn the harsh reality of galactic warfare. What he didn't expect was that he might be the one receiving an education.